So I got interested in transfer studies for two reasons. One was I was teaching many years ago, teaching an internship course in an English department that enrolled students who were very capable writers, all seniors, and they prided themselves on their good writing skills, and were then doing internships at local nonprofits and corporations and businesses, and taking a course with me in which we talked about the writing that they were doing on the job in these positions. And initially, they came back into that class absolutely devastated by their inability to deploy the good skills that they'd learned as English majors in these various settings. And so I then undertook a study with another person looking at the ways in which they transition from complete lack of knowledge about writing in their new settings to enough knowledge to be at least somewhat capable there. And we tracked some of the sort of emotional changes that they underwent in a series of 9 stages toward a final acceptance and understanding of their new roles.
My research has always looked at how literacy is defined, in what contexts, with what consequences and implications for particular groups. And I've always been particularly interested in students, in teachers, writing instructors, and in writing program directors and administrators. So that's a pretty big umbrella, but underneath that umbrella, I've always been interested in how people move among different contexts and what relationships their ideas about literacy have to the contexts where they operate. So that's another, I'm getting narrower and narrower as I go. This particular project that I brought to Elon started because I was talking to a colleague of mine when I arrived at UCSB in the history department, and he said, well, I'm really interested in how people learn to become good historical thinkers. And I said, oh my gosh, I would love to talk with you about that. So I used to be a history teacher, and I'm really interested in how people think about learning and doing and writing, how they define literacy, appropriate and inappropriate literacies, and that was a wonderful context in which to work. And our small study, thanks to Elon, has grown into a very large multi-year project with lots of side projects and just really fascinating work.
The other reason that I got interested in transfer was purely personal. As a writing scholar, I began to get interested in why, when I was asked to write in new and different settings, I failed so miserably, having already easily passed the 10,000 hour rule that Malcolm Gladwell proposes for expertise as a writer. And I couldn't understand why, for example, when I was asked to do a column for a monthly newsletter at my son's school about a very innovative conflict resolution system that they used there that involved students, other students helping to resolve conflicts, why I couldn't write that column nearly as easily as something much more complicated and sophisticated in my own field. And I didn't know what style to use, and I didn't know how to structure it, and I didn't know what kind of audience response I would get. I was so used to writing within my own domain. But I did, I think, have the right kinds of questions, and I've learned over the years that it's another kind of meta-knowledge that we need to teach students in order to perform well in all the sorts of new and unfamiliar settings that they go into. And so one of the issues there is that I don't think any writer ever really fully moves into a new setting without challenge. And the further, as we know, the further the distance between those settings, the less familiar the new setting is, the more challenge that will be. But I think there are some strategies and knowledge that we can provide students that help them at least to adapt more quickly, even though they will not be ever ready to write the way that the folks in the local context do. So those two reasons sort of precipitated my interest in transfer, and now we're seeing a blossoming of research, partly because of the Elon project, in this area, and it's been really interesting to see that develop.